together with Kaisiki Kalan and Kasikiana Ronalda, and everybody is really thinking about ways and opportunities how we can preserve even the language and make sure that younger generations have access to learning these indigenous languages, understanding the original ritual languages, so that there's a continuity in those cultural transfers. And I think this is an excellent opportunity to see how AI and digital archiving can assist us and even create probably language learning models that can fall right into the work of these communities. So we're not proposing something entirely different here. We are saying we come with ourselves a long-standing experience in very different spaces and backgrounds, and that we would like to offer our experience, our knowledge, our contacts, our vision to really join with everybody who is working towards the preservation of this knowledge. And even some of the presenters who will speak after us today have projects that are looking into exactly our questions. And when we say our questions, it's really not me and Erica asking, it is all of us here together asking. And this is the spirit in which we would like to show the next slide and really invite everybody to join us in becoming a guardian of these endangered cultures. And when we say endangered, we also know that in our own community and in our own way, it's very rooted and a lot of work has been done. And there are currently a lot of great initiatives in the communities, in the Taino spaces, in the Maroon communities, where everybody is really putting a lot of effort into making sure that the children learn the dances, learn the songs, learn the drumming. The drumming is a big important aspect in all of this, and really the communication and the ways from our ancestors. And we know there are a lot of efforts locally in the spaces, but I think we can think a little bit all together how we can bring that into the space and see that we thereby can make it more accessible to a wider audience and to people who are interested, and really looking at it as something that part of the knowledge. And we know, of course, some ancestral knowledge is sacred and secretive and cannot be shared and shall not be shared. And this is guiding the whole research that we're proposing, that you, the communities that are interested in this type of work, are going to define what is to be shared, is to be kept in probably internal archives that are saved in a different format. And yet, some of the knowledge, I passionately feel, has a big message for this world in this critical time of figuring out where we're all going as a humanity, as a humankind living on this earth, inherited from the generations coming before us. Some of the wisdom and knowledge that these ancestors have been always passing on to the generation, it is now time for us to make sure that a wide audience keeps hearing these messages rather than being bombarded with our sort of TikTok and whatever information is out there, and attention spans are getting very short. So I think this is also true for us and our little presentation here today. We're coming to an end, and really heartily invite everyone who listened to us, and thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing this online and physical space in this hybrid way with us. Thank you for bearing with the technical difficulties with us. And everybody who felt called, everybody who felt the message in our presentation, please reach out to us. Our emails are down there. We're happy to share our phone numbers as well. And maybe we can come together in a way where we can really have an online meeting with everybody interested in about a month's time. So we will continue to reach out to everybody in the conference, and I will be physically present on the ground from tomorrow. And so I'm looking forward to meet everyone and talk further and see what we can scheme up. And Erica, some closing words from your side. And I know you will be soon in Jamaica again, and we can meet physically and scheme projects and ideas.
I live in Jamaica as well. I actually live in Gordon Town in Kingston, up by Miss Lou. So I am definitely entrenched in some deep Jamaican culture. But I just hope that this resonated with you, that you can see our heart in this is to help with preservation. And I'm thinking about the future. And if when we're all gone, all of us here that are passed into the spirit realm, what will be left behind? And I think we now need to activate to transform a lot of the knowledge that we have and put it into a more digital active format, because we've done some digitalization before, but get it into a more active format that we could potentially even begin to monetize. So I think that our knowledge is so valuable, actually, and has large scale monetary value, that we actually need to try to corral it and make sure that we can define it, and that whatever benefit comes from the culture, that it comes back to the people. So thank you. I've really enjoyed sharing this idea with you, and we're certainly excited to
putting
hear
all that sound into your head, Jim. It's going to damage your ears. I can hear her way over here.
Well, I guess we were too loud. We were too loud then, huh?
Well, everybody should be able to adjust their volume on their computers, no? I think the input is one thing, but everybody has an output regulator.
Thank you so much for everything that you shared with us. You see, I work in community center myself, and any influence from your side, I will try to take on and use it into our community center. So blessed love, and thank you so much.
Blessings. In which community are you working, Sir Ragamuffin Muffinsky?
I work in Wales, so I'm from Wales. I'm originally from Poland. So the community center is just opened not long ago, and it's a new place, so new ideas and everything about unity, right? So we're trying to get all the people together and live as one community. So it's a new project, started with the gardens and stuff. So I'm really glad to have that influence from your side, and thank you so much again.
I didn't hear the name of the community. Can you repeat it?
It's Canongangwili. It's Kagan Becca. It's Wales, and it's in Hendy.
Okay, so maybe you can put that information in the chat. And also,
yes,
you saw our emails, you could reach out and send us an email about the project. That sounds very interesting.
And that's what we want. That's what we want. We do want, if there's any interest, we can all team up together. I think all of us, if we're here on this meeting today, we probably have the same viewpoints. We're trying to preserve culture and history and ancestry. So anyone that would like to join in that, we would welcome you.
Thank you so much, and I will try to sort something out. Like I say, I will send the name of the community, and then I will send the email as well over to you, and then to get two community centers together, and it'll be a brilliant thing at some point, at some time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Hi. Is he there? Yeah, Dr. Anderson here, Dr. Claudette. I find the project very, very interesting. Our foundation, Unuchi Foundation, we're about knowledge reparation. So we're really seeking to make available to people the knowledge that we've lost through this recent violent history. And one of the things we focus on is calendars, African calendars. And we are starting with the Igbo calendar, which we have up, and we started working on an app for the calendar. And what was interesting is that we managed to have AI read the calendar and the notes that we made in developing the app, which we're still working on. And it was powerful. We realized that we could actually get people to read the right information through this app. So all of these negative posturings of our African religion, all of these lies that have been told about our ancestors, just by giving AI the information to analyze and to put out, we were able to correct a few things, few misconceptions that people had about Igbo culture and about the calendar. And one of the most important ones was Ekwensu, which was translated by others as the devil. We have no devil in our traditional societies. And so with this app, we were able to correct and to give a definition. And so I just wanted to, put that out there, that I would love to have further discourse with you, because we're already doing this and we're seeing just how powerful it is when you can direct the narrative. And I noticed that you said there, instead of peer review, ethically reviewed. And it would be wonderful to see in an organic sense what that comes to mean for our societies now in today's world. So yeah, I just wanted to say kudos, and there are a number of projects out there already, but certainly placing this within the Maroon community is important, and I know that this will be impactful, because we just made a little thing, and it's just profound how much difference it's made when we're able to tell our own truths and people have access to that, as opposed to running around on the web to collect nonsense that has been written about us. So thank you for your work.
Because I think your example really pulls up that there's data already out there in the digital domain, but it was written by others about us, and a lot of that data might not be right. So I do think that this project, us coming together, really a underlying benefit is us being able to correct the narrative that's currently out there. And I would like for us to be able to establish the single source of our Indigenous truth, so that if anybody wants to know about our Indigenous truth, it would come to us to find out about that, versus going to a Google, Microsoft, and Silicon Valley, where they've just taken books and they've fed them into their machines. And many times it's not really taking our perspective. So I would really like for all of us to come together. And I know there's various projects going out there, but we need to focus on the data and the value actually that the data is going to have in the future. And not only that, the correctness of the data and having the single source of truth. That's what I hope that we will be able to get out of this project. And I do think we can monetize it for sure. They will pay us for our data coming from a right point of view, a truthful point of view about our people, because right now the data has been defined by other people other than us. So thank you for that. We can come together on that.
Yes, and I'd love to hear more about that project. It sounds really down our alley and exactly what we have been discussing, where we would like to start with calendars, with festivities, with rituals that have been held and are in the danger of either being forgotten or misinterpreted. And this is where, of course, being an academic and a critical thinker, we always know it is very difficult to speak about the truth and what it really means and who defines the truth. And that will also inform our discussions ourselves. And I think this is where your question is so relevant that you posed. How can we really come to, instead of a peer reviewed, but come up with something that serves the Indigenous community with an indigeneity perspective, where elders from the communities are reviewing these informations before we're putting them out, and also consent to what is going out and what is not going out. We're very sensitive about that side as well. So at this point, I think we have also almost more questions than answers, but I'm really delighted to hear about your project. I think it's a wonderful project, and I'm looking forward to hear much more about it, in which space, with whom you have been doing it and learning more, and definitely looking forward to you getting in touch with us and us setting up a call so that we can go more in depth into these questions and try finding some of the answers together and see how we can get us together in our quest for resources that we have to always try to find for projects like this. And this is where we all can really come in together as we have so much experience in different worlds and spaces. Do we have any more questions?
No, again, thank you very much for all that what you showed from your side, and like I said, influence from you about this living in oneness and unity. Thank you so much for that.
Yes, okay, so we want to invite our next presenter then, who we have on our list of presenters for this panel. We have Miss Samantha Reeves, and Samantha is online. She's an ethnomusicology student at UCLA, and she'll be speaking on the Bang, sound, symbolism, and resistance in Jamaican culture. So I want to welcome Ms. Reeves to present and share with us now, and with the help for you so online. Thank you, Ms. Reeves. Ms. Reeves should be with us online. We know she's not here in person. So she. And Dr. Osborne is now trained with us here in Charlestown and Maroon Town, of course, coming herself from Moortown. Dr. Osborne is, when I talk about digital stewardship, how UX research and design can help preserve Maroon knowledge. She's a senior UX researcher and lead at Meta with a PhD in medical anthropology, an MA in digital arts and sciences, and an MFA in
All right, greetings, everyone. Can you all hear me online? Everyone in the Otaku yard should be able to hear me.
Yes, they hear you.
Okay, excellent. Let me share my screen again. Okay. All right, hopefully you all can see that. Those of you all that are online, if you do all have questions or comments, I cannot see you, so by all means unmute yourself. But yes, thank you all so much for tuning into my talk. Again, my name is Brittany Osborne. In addition to being a research lead at Meta, I am also by training a medical and digital anthropologist. And I chose this topic because it's very dear and close to my heart. It allows me to, of course, be able to talk about something that I focus on within my profession, but it also allows me to marry this to my passion and strong commitment to honor my ancestors. And so I will be talking about digital stewardship. How can UX research and design help us to preserve our Maroon knowledge? And so before we begin, I wanted to do a quick overview by talking about why digital stewardship matters. So level setting on what that is and why it's significant in honoring our knowledge. And then I'm going to talk about the field of UX and how that can be leveraged as a tool for cultural preservation. After that, I'll be talking about some ethical considerations that I think is important for us to keep in mind in reference to this broader discourse around stewardship and Indigenous rights. And then I think it's important to talk and cover very briefly, looking at why we need more Maroon digital stewards, and also what are the formal and informal pathways for becoming one. And then last but not least, I will be closing out with talking about how can we continue to force this digital future in a way that's rooted in our ancestral wisdom. And speaking of ancestors, I wanted to briefly highlight my own lineage for those of you all that may not know. I am a Jamaican Maroon. I was born in Florida, but my father and our family come from the Upper Rio Grande Valley. And our Osborne lineage directly goes back to Moortown. And on my father's maternal lineage, our Bernard family continues to reside within Milford Castle. So I wanted to first start off this presentation by honoring and pay tribute to my immediate ancestors, my late grandparents, and then honoring and dedicating this presentation to them, as well as my father, who was still very much alive, by the way. Thank you. So before I begin, in the last talk I already touched on this, it's important to call out that Maroon knowledge is actively being preserved by our community in various ways. For example, our oral tradition through songs, through our narratives, even through dreams, music and dance, so our drumming and chromantic play is one way in which we are preserving our culture and our heritage. Through cultural and spiritual observances such as this annual festival that we have as well, and certain types of artifacts such as our abane that connects us to our ancestors and is used to communicate as well within the community. In addition to that, we do have documentation and research that is one modality in which we are preserving our culture. We have researchers outside the community that are allies and contribute to this effort, but it is also important for us to reiterate that we do have individuals that are Maroons by blood, that are Indigenous to the community, who are actively preserving the culture, such as the elder Beverly Carey. And then also we have our cultural wisdom that is inscribed to our ethnomedicinal knowledge. So we have elders like Evelyn Harris, and of course, Twin Bro. I'm sure those of the diaspora are very familiar with them and how they are doing work within both London and Tanzania around ethnomedical knowledge preservation. And then lastly, we have local and international cultural preservation efforts, such as the UNESCO World inscription for the John and Blue Curl Mountains and the communities therein for our cultural and ecological heritage. So even though we have these preservation efforts at play, it's very important that we keep the Maroon voices at the center of these efforts. If we don't do that, then we will open ourselves up in our communities up to various types of risk and leave us vulnerable to various types of risk. And for example, this can increase our risk of misrepresentation if we are not the drivers of these preservation efforts. Also, it can lead to cultural loss or erosion as more of our elders continue to age and pass on to meet the ancestors. If they don't pass that knowledge on, then it passes on with them. So that's a real threat that we have to mitigate for. And then also cultural appropriation. We have a lot of people that are very vocal, very passionate about Maroon culture, so much that they actually assume the identity of being Maroons. So that is also a threat that we need to be mindful of as well. And then last but not least, the reason for why we're here is about land and Indigenous rights and our sovereignty. And so when we are on the peripheral instead of at the center of these discussions, then that can threaten the sovereignty of our communities. And I think it's also important to call out that Maroon people, we are not immune to the phases of globalization. The world is increasingly becoming digitized, and we have individuals of the communities that live abroad, that have migrated abroad for various reasons. That's why you have people like myself that are first generation people of Jamaican Maroon heritage living outside the community. And so this is why digital preservation is so important, because it ensures that Maroon knowledge continues to remain authentic, protected, and accessible for future generations wherever they may be. And so in a nutshell, digital stewardship helps us to remember and honor our ancestors while preserving their ancestral wisdom for future generations. And specifically, it allows us to protect our knowledge systems and our cultural artifacts in ways that continues to respect our values regarding sovereignty, secrecy, and self-determination. So I wanted to talk about digital stewardship within the lens of the field of UX, or user experience. And this is just one way in which we can become digital stewards. And so UX is essentially all about keeping people at the center of the products that they use and shaping technology to make it feel more natural, respectful, and useful. And so specifically, UX helps us to focus on how people interact with tools and digital products, be it websites, apps, even digital archives, as was mentioned earlier. And so why does UX matter? It matters because it helps to create technology that works for people and not the other way around. And so why should we care about UX within this broader discussion? It gives us the ability to build digital spaces that reflect who we are. And it also allows us to keep our traditions alive in ways that the next generation can understand and continue to carry forward. And so there's two subfields within UX I wanted to briefly touch on for the sake of timing. One of them is looking at UX research. You may also hear it referred to as user research. And this is all about taking the time to learn from the people that we are building for. So UX research allows us, it requires us to listen, to observe, and ask the right questions. And it matters because it makes sure that the people who's building all of this stuff don't assume what the needs of the people are. And I can't tell you all the number of times I've seen people try to build products that do not meet the needs or the expectations of the people they're trying to put those products towards. So it's very important to not assume, and user research helps us to prevent that from happening. And so why should we care? Again, UX research is one of the tools that can allow us to design digital products or artifacts with our people and not just for them. And so some common UX research methodologies that we may very well already be using includes interviews. So talking to the older people, to the culture keepers within our community to learn from them. That is one way. Survey. Who's ever bought a product and they've asked, would you like to complete this survey? If you have, completing a survey is a form of UX research as well. Sometimes surveys are a little bit annoying, but they are used regularly by different types of companies. And then also learning mapping. So when you're using a product, every type of step that you take, every resource that you may rely on, or every person that you may interact with without using that product is a form of journey mapping. Usability testing is another method. So that's essentially testing out a product to see how usable it is. And then card sorting. I know we talk a lot about our herbal and ethnomedical knowledge. Being able to categorize those various types of herbs in ways that make categorical sense. If you are trying to build out a digital archive, that is one way in which you can do that empirical research. And then last but not least, ethnographic research. This is all about learning from the people by being in the midst of, so a sense of immersion. And then we have UX design. UX design helps us to organize our cultural knowledge in ways that make sense to our people regardless of age. And so this specific subfield is all about making sure that the products that we're developing are welcoming and familiar, so they provide this sense of being intuitive. And this matters because it ensures that the tools that we're using aren't confusing, overwhelming, or frustrating. And so why should we care? Be it language apps that we may be trying to create, and I know Tashika Sterling of Moortown is at the forefront when it comes to some of the type of linguistic type of preservation efforts that are underway, or if it's herbal archives, any of those ways. All of those things rely on good design, which helps us to ensure that tools are both clear, respectful, and accessible for all Maroons at home and abroad. And so some of those design methods, really quickly, if you're thinking about like clear layouts of the latest app you may have used, that may require wireframing or even prototyping, which is like a clickable type of version of that product. If you're thinking about how to make navigation of a site easier, more simplified, more streamlined, then we have designers called content designers who essentially build out a site map or a way to explain how to navigate through that experience in a way that makes sense for the people who are using that product. And then last but not least, we have interaction designers. So if you think about that link you had to click on to join this Zoom, an interaction designer had to think about that link as well as anything that you may interact with or engage with on a screen. And we also have design systems that are used and compiled, such as component libraries that make it easy for designers to build the stuff that we use every day. And so I think it's also important, because I know I threw a lot of information at you all really quickly. I wanted to share examples of how UX can be used in action in regards to cultural preservation. And so I already mentioned potentially leveraging the field of UX to develop language apps, herbal digital archives, as well as we can consider even interactive territorial maps and boundaries. And one of the projects that I'm working on right now is a searchable database of our historical ancestral records. So digitizing those records in an app called Maroon Roots. So Maroon Roots is essentially a genealogy app that will be used, hopefully, to explore these Jamaican Maroon ancestral records that oftentimes a lot of them may not be digitized, or it may be behind a paywall, or it's very difficult to access some of those historical records. And so currently, I have a prototype here. I'm showing an example of how I'm searching for my Osborne ancestors within Moortown. But I'm relying on those early settlement records from the early 1800s, and that covers around 1,200 Maroons and non-Maroons within our 4 major communities. So essentially, Maroon Roots will be that app that anyone, be it at home or abroad, that may want to learn more about those specific ancestors that walked over 200 something years ago, they can be able to quickly search by them not only by name, by community, by their age, their gender, or even their status within the community. So with that said, digital stewardship and technology sounds good, but there are various types of ethical considerations that are very paramount for us to understand, because we need to protect our knowledge in a way that is driven by community-led choices. And so some things to keep in mind includes any type of digital product that's created, it needs to be community approved. So be it reviewed by leadership, by councils, or by community experts, it's important that any type of product that draws from Maroon knowledge, history, or culture needs to be reviewed by the people that product is built from. Also, digital storytelling. If you ever share your songs or your artistic ability or your drumming expertise, what have you, your likeness, this, of course, needs to be something that is done only if consent is provided. And then also, too, my dad talks about chamu chamu, and even my granny's cousin, the elder, the late Isaac Bernard, would always say in his interviews, chamu chamu yetu. When we're building out these digital products, it's very important to also know when to hush. And the reason why is because there's certain types of knowledge that should be gated, that should be limited, that should remain private, and that should remain sacred. And then also, too, we have to seek out those knowledge keepers to make sure that what we're building out remains authentic and is accurately represented. And then, of course, as we're developing digital technologies, there may be a need for providing training to those community members that may not feel comfortable with using those products. And then last but not least, there's a need for long-term preservation. So as long as there's elders that will continue to transition on and meet the ancestors, and new ancestors that will be reborn for the next generation, there will always be a need to create tools that are stable, that can be maintained over time. And so the need for digital stewardship, I wanted to close out with this. We need more Maroons that are creators and not just users of technology. And we have some that are out there, like myself, another Maroon sister of mine works for Google, but it's not a whole lot of us, and we need more. And the reason why is because having Maroons at the center of technology allows us to ensure that what we're building is culturally accurate and authentic, and that it can protect our sacred knowledge because it gives us the control over what we're sharing, what should remain hidden, and how that knowledge should be handled. And then last but not least, it can empower future generations When Maroon youth see themselves as builders and not only consumers of technology, it opens up different pathways towards leadership, creativity, and innovation. And so there's different ways to become a digital steward. I provide some here. This is not an exhaustive list. So for example, formal education, I got my degree in anthropology. There's other allied fields such as computer science, design, psychology, computer science. Also, people take UX boot camps that gives them that intensive skill acquisition around design and research by providing them with hands-on experience. And then also various certifications that are out there that are offered from various institutions and companies. And so these icons represent my different pathways. As you can see, I only had one for formal, but I relied heavily on informal pathways to enter this field. There's not one right way to enter the field of UX. And so some other things include self-study or online courses through Udemy, Skillshare, LinkedIn Learning, personal projects such as the latest one that I'm working on, Maroon Roots, that genealogical app, networking, being able to connect with people, be it through conferences or online communities, to learn from them and learn the best practices or the tricks of the trade from them. And then volunteering and freelancing. Not everything that you may do starting within that field, you may get paid for. So taking on those freelance opportunities that are meaningful and provide value back to the community is another way that you can beef up a portfolio for those that desire to enter this field. And then of course, gaining mentorship. And if you have skills already that you're leveraging, I know I talked about some methods, then you can be able to transfer those skills within the field of user experience. And so this is my last slide. I just wanted to reiterate the importance of preparing for a digital future. Creating digital technologies that protect and honor ancestral wisdom. This is not a stop, end all, be all. It's an evolving and ongoing process. And so this requires that our communities continue to define how our knowledge is preserved, shared, and safeguarded. And the reason why is if we empower the next generation to enter and lead in tech, then we ensure that our culture remains both rooted, respected, and ready for a digital future. And with that, I'll say Madasi, Madasi, Madasi. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dr. Osborne, very enlightening, very interesting. I really loving this panel. Talking about the AI, intersectional AI, university research, UX, user experience.
User experience. Yes.
All right.
I don't know if anyone had any questions or anything. I know for the sake of time. Yes,
All right,
Dr.
yes.
Buckley.
Congratulations to that wonderful presentation. I really loved it. This was so informative and very deep. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in Charlestown tomorrow and have some continued conversation about how we can put our heads together and how we can assist with some of the beautiful work that you have been doing and learn more about what your university is supporting there in terms of the project. Some of it seems to be really your own project. This is wonderful work. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes, I was speaking for Bourbon. I could find the Bourbon Seventh-day Adventist Church. And there were other places that I was looking for, just could not pinpoint them. Even so much as to try to seek out the coordinates, even those aren't available. So when will this app be available?
Well, right now it's in its prototype phase. So I am excited to share it in the testing phase with people for more feedback. I would love to get additional feedback from everyone. But I do think it's important to first have individuals who are already kind of knowledgeable about the oral history of our people, because there's certain questions that I came across when I was digitizing some of the early settlement records that I'm unclear about. So I do want to rely and hopefully be able to consult with some of the elders, the leadership as well, and other individuals within the community that are knowledgeable about some of those older records. But once that's done, and I get their stamp of approval, then yes, I would want to essentially launch this to the broader public. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is very interesting and exciting. Love anthropologists. I ended up in political science though, so I have some questions about power. All right, so when you're describing the benefits of UX, right, as a field, it sounded very benign, but usually this research is commissioned or needed by some for-profit entity. It's not necessarily for the benefit of the users. If you feel like it's beneficial, but it benefits, right, another entity. So I'm curious about what interventions can really support Maroons in what's a dog-eat-dog world out there, right? How can we get access to intellectual property rights up front, right? What are used, again, to suggest some things in those directions, but if you could speak more to how to really protect, given that it's a power and profit play in the mainstream system.
Right. I think that is a really good call. When it comes to like intellectual property ownership and then data privacy, these are real concerns. And I think one of the things that we have to be mindful of is when we are developing things, how much of that development are we in control of or are we aware of? I feel sometimes we do have external scholars, which is great. I am all for diverse scholarly voices, but sometimes they are the more informed party within that exchange. And so that's why I wanted to focus so much on actually taking the time to build out additional digital stewards within the community. I think that is the first thing that we have to do. We have to be more mindful of these technologies that people are saying are important and we need to, develop and adopt within our respective communities. So I think the first phase of that would be to gain some sense of knowledge acquisition within digital technology. And that's not everyone learning the same stuff, but obviously if that's something that speaks to you, this is something that I feel we as a community should be able to invest in those minds and passions of those individual people. And then also too, when we are in conversations with larger corporations, obviously I work with Meta. I will be very transparent. I'm speaking and I'm able to say that I work for Meta. However, this project has nothing to do with Meta, and they wanted to be very clear about that. And so a lot of the work that I do within the community, I don't get paid for. I try not to have it tied to my own financial gain. And this is something that's not new within my specific experience, but it's something that I readily adopted even at the time when I was earning my doctorate. I purposefully chose not to research within my community because I knew I was not the one that was going to be signing off on my dissertation. So I think that there's certain types of hard trade-offs that each of us have to individually say within ourselves, because yes, I think those within our community who have, these passions and these skill sets, they should be cultivated, they should be fed. But then also too, I think we have to walk that tight line to see how are we truly honoring our ancestors and what we're doing? What are we willing to give up? What are we willing to sacrifice to further that? So I think that this is a moral question for sure, but then I think it's also a broader discussion around how can we benefit from our knowledge without exploiting our individual people within the community.
Nice.
Thank you.
Please feel free to share. Thank you.
Dr. Claudette Anderson.
Is Dr.
Present.
Anderson with us online?
Present.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Not sure if we have Dr. Anderson.
Yes, she is online. She just
Yes, okay. And I see her microphone is open and her camera. Dr. Anderson, we're not hearing you.
Marcus, Mr. Goff,
Yes.
you're not here?
Yes, we're hearing you now. We're hearing you now.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead now. We're hearing you now.
Go ahead, we're hearing you.
Oh, okay. I thought there would be an introduction. I was
We're
waiting
not
on an
hearing you again.
You've lost me?
Oh, we're not hearing at the moment. Just, I'm not sure what's going on with your audio.
I haven't done anything. The audio has been open. I have not touched anything here. The audio and the video is open.
Not hearing her through your laptop, guys. Hearing her through your laptop.
Go ahead and speak again, please.
I am here. I am present.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Present. Are you still hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you now.
Let me know when you're ready for me to go.
Yes, sir. We're hearing you now. Please go ahead.
Okay. So my presentation is entitled Odinala, What is in the Land? Odinala, What is in the Land? African Indigenous Knowledge as Relevant and Redemptive. My name is Dr. Claudette Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of Unuchi Foundation, a knowledge reparation nonprofit. We are particularly dedicated to knowledge reparation. That is to say, we want to repair the epistemicide defined as the killing of knowledge, particularly African knowledge, that has happened with the recent transatlantic slave trade and the evils that continue thereafter. We are grounded in an Igbo-centric view of the universe, and by Igbo, we mean to say Afrocentric when we're talking about the Caribbean. Different peoples from different ethnicities were captured and shuffled together in a space, and in Jamaica and these parts of the world, we became known as Black, and we have this common identity. So Igbo-centric is Afrocentric from our Africana Caribbean space. Odi Nala means it is in the land. Odi Nala means what is in the land. What is in the land? If it's not in the land, if it doesn't follow natural order, if it's not in concert with nature, that is to say, Mother Nature, it's an imbalance, a disharmony, and should be shunned. Ordinalo, what is in the land, dictates community, customs, ideology. What is in the land dictates our way of life. Within Igbo culture, we talk of Ordinala as the thought or the philosophy of nature, and Omenala as the actions that emanate from this groundedness in Ani, Allah, or Ana, which are three terms that are used for earth. What is in the land? Since 1492, over 500 years, what is in the land of Jamaica has become a point of contention. So I just want to talk briefly about land, what is in it, the negatives that's in it, and how we can use this ancestral wisdom to restore Yamahe. The Jamaica that we know is not the Jamaica that who live there know. What is in the land is our ancestors. We talk of ancestral wisdom. But what is in the land is also our enslavers. They're buried here. What is in the land lies about us. What is in the land? Truth about us. As Maroons, what does it mean to have reverence for the land? What does it mean to recover ancestral wisdom? The theme of this conference is the land, ancestral connections, indigenous rights, and stewardship. And so I've been asked by the ancestors to talk about ancestral connections. Yamahe, this island. We can speak of two major ethnic groups against whom violence had been committed. That is to say, first, the Native Americans or the Tainos, and subsequently, the Africans. How were these, our ancestors, connected with the land? And how were they connected to the land? How did they see themselves as part and parcel of Yamahe, as part and parcel of the planet Earth? So I'm being asked to remind us that the land is also the earth, which is also our home. How many of us today have a planetary consciousness? If we're connected to our ancestors and if we seek to reconnect with our ancestors, we need to establish within our daily lives, within our sense of self, a planetary consciousness, an awareness of the earth as a life force, as an element, as our home, as a particular plane of consciousness. Odinala asks us to remember that our ancestors saw Earth as a particular plane of existence, as a body of knowledge with its own frequencies, sounds, ways of thinking and being. Odinala asks us to remember Earth, Annie, as having memory. The earth remembers. Have we forgotten that the earth remembers? Have we forgotten that earth is nature? Importantly, have we forgotten that earth is elemental? It is one of the four forces within which we say we live and have our being. It is our substantive home. When we begin to see the planet as our home, what then do we do? How then do we reorient ourselves? Obia, Obi, home, this. Obia, this home, this house, that is Ani. And more specifically, Obia, this house that we are now calling Jamaica. If we say that it has a consciousness, if we say that the island of Jamaica has memory, if we say that the island of Jamaica is a body of knowledge, how do we orient ourselves, or reorient ourselves in how we live? If we see each other as descendants of our ancestors and as particularly important elements of ancestral knowledge, how would we treat each other? Odinala says that when an abomination is committed in the land, if it is unaddressed for a year, if it is unaddressed for a cycle of 365 days, it becomes rooted as vengeance in the land. And so I want to talk about this vengeance that's rooted, this knowledge, this memory that our island has of the violence committed in it. Violence, what is in the land? We have inherited a land where violence is endemic. And so we ask, how? How would our ancestors effect repair? We're talking about preserving our knowledge with modern technology. We're talking about the importance of our ancestral memory. But one of the things that I think that we don't want to deal with upfront, which I'm going to bring up here as I've been asked, fairness and justice. If we say that we want to reorient ourselves towards ancestral knowledge, what would our ancestors do if mistakes have been made? What would our ancestors do? They were caused to inflict harm on others. And this is the vengeance rooted in the land. What would fairness and justice look like in the 21st century Jamaica? Yamahe as a body of knowledge, Yamahe as memory, the land remembering. The land remembering. The land asking us, what indigenous actions and behaviors and ways of being can we effect today to make for a better Jamaica? What have we done to each other? And what do we need to do to each other again to repair this breach? And so I want to point out that Maroon history is a checkered history. And that as we come together to talk about ways of preserving what's good, we also need to talk about the things that are bad in our community. We're going to depend now on oral history to make these interventions into the digital age. And we have particularly different challenges because of the history. And so we're already saying we're going to be mindful of that. But there are things that we can effect now that will make for repairs. If we say that the Maroons in signing the treaty, that history is now saying this was not a good act, how then do we make the repair? Are the Maroons particularly placed in a unique position to make certain contributions to the country that other people can't make because they're not Maroons? What are those things? The ancestors are asking us to look at our Maroon communities and see what exists in those places that we can use to repair this inheritance of violence rooted in the land. 365 times 533 years is a lot of root. That root is now its own tree. That's a lot of years of violence. Maroons being part and parcel of that violence. How do we address the harm? How do we ensure, and I know The people haven't thought about this. But we have to ensure that when we begin to present this knowledge, because there's been epistemicide, because there's so much that we don't know about our own history, we have to ensure that when we begin to employ these technologies and people become more aware of our checkered history, that we're able to maintain the peace, that we're able to forgive. There has been no reconciliation. We have not had our civil rights movement. And that needs to happen. We cannot be giving people information and not making sure that the space within which this new information is coming is one that is not going to cause more harm and bloodshed. Let us not take what we're doing for granted. I've been also given to give you that if you're going to talk about being in concert with the earth and going back to our ancestors and to put ourselves, like Sankofa says, in the mindset of our ancestors, we have to recover our ancestral ways of keeping time. This is a must. We have to uproot those old ways of tending to the earth, of being in rhythm with the earth, which are both African and Taino, which happened before the violence became endemic. If we're talking about Maroon communities, what can we get from these stories that have been handed down to help us? And if we're going to separate ourselves, the Maroons and everybody else, again, what will the Maroon contribution look like to us, saying to the Jamaican government, you want us to be a republic. We want the Maroon calendar. We want the Taino calendar. We don't want this Gregorian calendar. Can we have use of our own calendars? Where will that knowledge come from? How will we be able to, as descendants of Africans, present a case to the Jamaican government, which we understand by and large what their position is? We're also talking about going into being a republic. And here it is, I had a great difficulty coming to present at this conference because I asked the person who gave me the call for papers, why is this place still called Charlestown in 2025? The ancestors are saying the naming of the land is important. Why is it still Charlestown? Why are we calling the land by the names of violent people, of people who committed violence in the land? How will the violence stop? We call in on that violence every day with these place names that we still have. We have to begin to look at the land differently. Look at our ancestral connections differently. Come to our Ama Ocha, our village square, and talk to each other in honesty. Because our children deserve to know the truth. And Bobby's saying, tell the children the truth, but we can't tell the truth if we don't know it. And if we say now we're coming together to honor our ancestor, if we're coming together, Yamahe was here before us, before we even gave it a name. It was Ani, it's the land. These things that are here before us that we came to inherit within the context of relentless violence. Let us not pretend that what happened to our ancestors, which is in effect saying what happened to us, because we're our ancestors, that we as Africans amongst ourselves now, after all of these years, that we can come together to say, what is in the land as vengeance rooted, we can deal with. We have our ancestral ways. We have our Ofo and our Ogu. We have fairness and justice. what does fairness and justice look like in our African communities? To the extent that we're Africano, what does fairness and justice look like when we put ourselves in the mindset of our ancestors as we seek to move forward? It is inevitable into a new Jamaica. How do Maroons plan to contribute to nation building in this new phase? Because no African group has really been given a chance, no Indigenous group, well, has been given a chance to participate. Now we can demand participation. What will we bring to the table as Africans, as an Afrocentric society? We're changing if the very places that the Maroons live still have the name of their colonizers, that we haven't sought to repair the land by renaming it in this simple gesture, then everything that we're doing is a joke, because we're not addressing Allah, which is the foundation. We're not addressing Ani, which is the foundation. The earth is non-violent. The water, it flows. If we begin to consider ourselves as a flowing body of water, as substantive earth, as free as the air, if we begin to see ourselves elementally as our ancestors saw themselves, as connected to the planet, having a planetary consciousness and recognizing non-violence as a way of life, what will that look like as we move forward in 2025 into our future? Will the Maroon community come out and support the repeal of the Obia Act? To say, yes, plantation slaves were not allowed to, but we were allowed to practice African religion, since this is the word that African religion became known by the communities. That would be a great unity. That will be a great moment of unity that we haven't had since we were forced to live this way. What is in the land? Have we forgotten our gods that were in the land, that we worshipped in the land? I'm asking, Odinala is asking, what does optimal earth living look like for us in the 21st century if we say we're appealing to ancestral wisdom? The Maroon communities, more than any other community in Jamaica, had the opportunity to be family, even against, but they had the opportunity to be where others didn't. How can that history help us to understand what is in the land and what we need to do to repair the land? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dr. Anderson. So okay, right. So we just want to be able to have a final question and answer, so that we can be able to wrap up this panel. And so please, are there any final questions either from the panelists or from the floor? I just want to point out, I did say earlier, Dr. Anderson is the Executive Director and Professor of Obia at Onuchi Foundation and Afro-Atlantic Religious Reparation Resource Nonprofit. Okay, so we have a question here from the audience. Yes, sir. Come forward and ask a question. Yeah, man. Right here. Yes. I want to get the name, sir. I was committed to come from you. Thank you for that question. We're going to answer that. Yeah. No, that's more. All right. More questions. More questions. Go to the panelists and for some response. Any more questions for me? Go to all panelists. Okay, so we have the panelists who want to answer the question. Anderson, would you want to respond to that question?
Mr. Goff, you will have to repeat the question. I was hearing none of it. I can't hear what the young man is saying.
Dreadlocks. Them not here when the microphone is on. Online not here. Sir, come talk right here, sir. Thank you.
Hello, greetings again. You hearing me clearly?
Now we're hearing you. Thank you.
All right, great. You hearing me through this or without this? All right. Let me see if I can get everything that I said before. A blessing day to you. My name is Roshan Thomas. I reside in the Robbins Bay area, St. Mary. It's a historical site according to the buildings that are there, the structure, the dams that was built there back in days by slaves. But it's not a historical site because our government does not see it as such, and it is not followed up as such. However, my question is, with the indigenous rights that are being asked about and the merger of AI and the merger of all these other things with our indigeneity, how are we safe as a people with the treaties that were signed in 1700s still being the things that we are going off of to say we are safe? The persons who gave us these treaties in the past, they utilized these treaties to kind of empower us as people to have their way in the long run. How will that not be the same thing going in the future with the treaties remaining the same? How is our land safe? How is our people safe? And how is our heritage therefore safe? Is my question.
Very, very thoughtful question. And this is why I say that we're going to have to work it out the ancestral way now. There is nothing that we have in present day governance in the Caribbean, official governance, that is going to help us resolve this issue. We have to appeal to ancestral wisdom. Lands were captured, as we said, capture land. They came, they captured the land. They said they owned the land and subsequently parceled out land to people. We know that indigenous cultures don't think of land that way. So here it is that you have a treaty that says these lands are your lands. Ancestral wisdom would not necessarily agree with that. So what do? We were caught in a situation where a decision had to be made, and the decision that was made was, okay, we will accept your X amount of lands for ABC. People did what they had to do at the time. This was, I keep saying it, and I know people find it hard to understand because, as I say, we have inherited this violence. Our ancestors, this way of life, this thing that we have become that was forced on us was alien to our ancestors. And so if you're fighting and you're fighting and you're fighting and you're fighting and you get tired and you realize this technology eventually that they have, you know, is going to take over, you go and you have some discussions and you make a decision. It doesn't mean that you, in that moment, that our ancestors didn't understand that what they were giving us was life so that their progeny would continue and that we would come back to them to figure it out later. But when we look at Maroon communities today, they're mostly Christian, right? We have a few indigenous practitioners. So if we say we're going back to the ancestors to ask what is the right thing to do in 21st century Jamaica about these lands that have been apportioned to some Black people, while some other Black people were suffering and being raped and being beaten and all of this other thing. How do we haven't really talked about it. And we have to talk about it amongst ourselves intelligently.
That's right, intelligently.
Intelligently. We can't approach it the ways that we've been approached. And this is why we come back to ancestral wisdom. Things were done then. They are depending on us now. They're asking us to figure out what the right thing is to do now. And, you know, what if it says, well, Moortown needs to give up X amount of acres for a shrine to be made for everybody to come and cry? Would the people who are in charge of Moortown today allow that? What will the interventions be? And I mean meaningful. I don't mean just sitting down, and talk, because this affects us. What if some young man, somewhere they're raised in Kingston, where violence is rooted in the earth, goes on to Britney's app, sees something, it jogs his memory, and he decides he's going to go and raise Moortown, and houses are burnt and people die? What do? You don't think about it, but we haven't gotten to the worst yet. If now the quote unquote, we know that Maroons are dispersed throughout the island and elsewhere. What if somebody decides, I remember that Maroon Taki rebellion, that's what they did, and they decided we have to begin the repair. What does reparation between the Maroon community and the broader society look like? We have to engage the government in an intelligent way. I saw a conference being held at UWI and some young man saying, give an excuse. And I heard another man saying that they allowed the British to stay. Well, I was like, well, that's strange because I don't hear any British speaking English. But we've all forgotten our languages, which we can't recover, right? This is another thing that AI can help us with. So these lies that we're telling ourselves and the things that we're making up in order to maintain a position isn't going to work if we really want to go forward intelligently, if we want to go forward peacefully, if we want to say what is in the land that was bad is now cleansed. Shouldn't it be that we have Maroons and quote unquote the general going through the island, pouring libation in places where we know Tainas were massacred, pouring libation in places where we know Africans were massacred? The ancestors are crying out. They've suffered, they're buried here. The enslavers are buried here. Thomas Thistlewood, the worst of the kind. He's buried in the land beside the people who he raped and beat. And we have to address these spiritual matters. We hear the Prime Minister getting up every day talking foolishness about he coming after. This is not how you solve crime. The crimes that are being committed are crimes that have been rooted in the land for 533 years. Why is this person behaving this way? We're not talking about the mental illness. We're not talking about what has happened to us. Ancestors are asking us to reconnect, to hear their stories. We know the ways of doing it. We can't do it if we want. And to come out with our Africanness and say, this is our African way, and you are wrong. This is not how we're going to solve crime in the island. So, some get it, but that's my long answer question. It's not an easy question, it's not an easy answer, but we start in dialogue and in truth. Instead of Maroons defending certain behaviors, it's time for Maroons to say, yes, it happened. We feel that it had to happen. How do we go forward? How do we make some repair? Because now, if we say Maroon reparation, we want reparation from the Maroons, the whole of Jamaica, what's going to happen? Maroons, even though they enjoyed British protection after emancipation, what happened? So we look at Maroon communities and we're arguing these communities need upliftment too. But then somebody else says, no, they had it good during the British when they were helping to beat us and rape us. We have to have a proper conversation and stop the hiding. So this is my answer. We begin the conversation, I think, engendered by the Maroons. They should have some kind of conference and invite people, stakeholders to come and talk, not to demand more land, as I am hearing, and not to privilege the early part of what Maroon is not even an African word. These things are very problematic to our ancestors. Why are they calling us Maroons? That's not our word. We have to begin to look again at the language and the naming. We're using these terms that other people use to define us and expecting to find solutions in their cosmology. No, it's in Ordinala. Every West Central African ethnic group, you will find the same basic thing. We are looking outside of ourselves for solutions while we still have access because we can look in the mirror. So this is my long-winded, and I'm going to stop here. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jonathan.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. All right. We're running over time, but I see all the beloved colonels monitoring our town. What other question? So here we have Colonel Sterling of our town. Colonel Sterling, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. And let me say, first of all, welcome to be here. And I know it might have been said before, but I just want to, in a brief way, look at the question, see if I can shed some light and send that gentleman and ask. And in response to what Dr. Anderson has said, first of all, the relevance or none of the treaty that was signed is something I hear not there. And one must take into consideration the terms and conditions under which the treaty was signed. Our ancestors, to begin with, never referred themselves as Maroon. As Dr. Anderson is an alien to them, it was a derogatory way to describe the African people. Or not the Africans, but the original persons who were living in Jamaica before the arrival of the Africans. It was very derogatory. If you were calling them white and gay, that's basically what Maroon was describing, the word Maroon. Also referred to themselves by the African term that many would best describe them, and that they were a Kunkun. And that is why today we refer to ourselves as a Kunkun Pikin. But when you look at the treaty that was signed, when the treaty was signed, and who were the main instigator of the signing of that treaty, all foreigners were not the main instigator. It was the British, they are the English first, that were the main instigator. They were the ones who went into the country to see Portugal to have it signed. They were the same one who went into the Blue Mountain to see how 9 other followers to have this treaty signed. If you look at the time span that elapsed between the original negotiation and the time that the initial contract was made and when the treaty was presented to be signed, you see that there was a substantial amount of days before it was drawn up. And that is because the persons who made the contact had to go back to the governor, find it out, and then discuss it, and they put it. And in terms and conditions of the treaties, the first article, it says that they were for peace. This would never be true. They never leave where they were living to go and find the British to sign for any peace. So it should have been that the British are the ones, the English, they are the ones who sue for peace, not the Google people. They never did, Portugal never did, Nani never did, Paul never did. But who was doing the reading and writing? Was all African foreigners doing the reading and writing? No, they are not the ones who were doing it. It is the British who were doing it. The British already had a signed treaty, and we didn't get there. All foreigners ensured that the treaty that was signed was done in the traditional Akan law treaty way. Some of your blood, some of my blood, a little rum and a little herb, we mix them and we are drunk from that. Because if you violate it, then the blood will be able to show that the person who does the violation. I mean, they will not say that what was done, because they think that was all part. But that is what all foreigners were accustomed to. No, the terms and conditions in the treaty was true towards the colonizers, because they are through the treaty. What is it that all foreigners were seeking from this treaty? They want to be left alone. They want to settle peacefully, not to be in constant everyday entanglement with British soldiers. And then from that, once you leave them alone, and they leave you alone, and you can ask yourself the question: the articles in the treaty that speak to helping to preserve the land, helping to return space that are enslaved people, like plantation thereafter. And about the second, like what Dr. Hans has said, the time has come for us as Jamaican, as Maroon, are able to have to sit down and have a civil discussion and it's not. And try to get all that.
Suppose I can hear from
Think
them
of
too
in
terms of
the name and the blame,
supposed to
because
give
it
take
will
all
only
right
serve the purpose that the colonizer that intended for it to serve in the beginning. The other thing that I looked at is the treaty was signed first ratification in 1713. 100 years after that, it was emancipation. And another 100 years after emancipation, the first unit of the political party would have been started in Jamaica. And if we had examined the treaty and we find fault in the treaty, which we are faults in the treaty, we should not have repeated it 200 years after by having two major political parties that between themselves cause more pain and crisis. I mean, what I'm saying about city crop up with many people, but I am challenging you to prove me wrong. If we had had one body like our African footprints were used to, we sit down on the tree, we have our discussion, and we move forward with it. We didn't have to accept the position of the colonizers to say we must have two political parties and put together shows and then. And that's one of the reasons why we are having certain discussions in Jamaica today. Because if we think that the treaty with the Maroons and the colonizers was wrong, I am saying that we had 200 years to learn. And if we never learn over the last over 200 years, don't come to me now 63, 2 years after, and come to try and blame anybody. Look at yourself, sit down, have a discussion, and to see what is the best way going forward. Because I definitely speaking, I don't know that the treaty in and of itself had caused more mayhem in Jamaica than any other things that we will have done. And we should, this question was asked at me more than a few years ago. I answered it. And in most places that I have gone, persons that ask a question, some places are to pay for it. But what I'm saying, the most important thing, let us have the African. Let us sit down. Let us talk about it in an open, frank way. And I said, I am accusing you of anything, you are accusing me of anything. Because trust me, there is no blame to go around. Because while our footprints are how we are fighting, the black shots were how we are hunting them. And you are being paid for that. And these are things that if we sit down, we look at it, we illustrate everything, and we have a discussion and we go forward. Because I tell you what, Africa that we came to here today, whether we a Republican form of government that monarchical or any form of government, there are some things that we will be holding on to. And no matter what any government say or do, they cannot get that from us. Because we believe in ourselves. We are Kunkuno. We are Ghanaian people, we are Kojo people, we are Goa people, and we will continue to defend that which we believe in. It was difficult back then, it is still difficult now, but it is still even easier because the land that our foreparents had secured for and our behalf belongs to the rising generation. Me today, and the others today, we are just only for the children, the generation that is yet to come, those people. And we need to defend it, we need to work hard. We're not going out here to say we must get more land than we must acquire, or what's ours is ours. So we need to have that discussion, and the government will eventually come to some senses, and we will, as Jamaica, we can do the cleansing, we can do the libation, and we can do everything that is required to ensure that going forward, we can have a smoother path. Merci.
Okay.
One more time, we'll be speaking on the panel this afternoon. All right, so we're right into our second panel, which is about, yes, our time. We have a very good discussion, so please have to thank the warm round of applause all of our first panelists. Dr. Tim, yes, Dr. Osborne, Dr. Anderson, and for participating.